My neighbor built a fence 3 feet into my yard, and the HOA approved it. But what they didn't realize was that those 3 feet weren't just mine. They were the beginning of a much bigger problem. I moved into my house about 4 years ago. Quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Just clean streets, decent people, and enough space to breathe. One of the main reasons I bought the place was the backyard. It stretched farther than most in the area, backed up to a line of old trees. It felt like my own little escape. And for a while it was. My neighbor, Greg, moved in about 6 months after I did. At first he seemed normal, friendly enough. The kind of guy who waves but never really talks. That changed quickly. Greg was obsessed with boundaries, not in a respectful way. He'd constantly mention property lines in casual conversations, like he was preparing for something. At the time, I didn't think much of it. That was mistake number 1. One morning, I woke up to the sound of drilling, loud, persistent, right outside. I stepped into my backyard and froze. A construction crew was digging post holes, not near the edge, inside my yard, at least 3 feet in. I walked over immediately. "Hey, this is my property," I said. One of the workers shrugged. "Just building where we were told." I looked over, and there was Greg, standing with a coffee in his hand, watching, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You're over the line," I told him. He shook his head calmly. "Nope, this is my boundary." I laughed because it was so obviously wrong. "I've seen the survey," I said. "So have I," he replied. That's when I realized he wasn't guessing. He believed it, or at least he wanted me to think he did. I contacted the HOA immediately. They told me something that made no sense. The construction has been approved. Approved? Without notifying me? Without verification? That was the first red flag. I requested documentation. They sent me a copy of Greg's property line adjustment submission. It looked official, stamped, signed, but something about it felt off. Still, the fence kept going up, post by post, panel by panel, each one cutting deeper into my yard. But that wasn't the worst part. By the 3rd day, Greg started using the space. He moved patio furniture onto the stolen strip, set up a grill, even invited people over, like it had always been his. That's when things got personal. I confronted him again. "You're trespassing," I said. He smirked. "No, you just don't understand your own property." That line stuck with me, because it sounded rehearsed, like he'd said it before. A week later, I received a letter, not from the HOA, from Greg's lawyer, claiming I was interfering with his land use, threatening legal action. That's when I stopped playing nice. I pulled out my original purchase documents, survey maps, title records, everything. And that's when I noticed something strange. My lot wasn't just larger, it had an irregular extension near the back corner, a detail I had completely ignored when I bought the place. But now, it mattered. A lot. I hired an independent surveyor, not someone connected to the HOA, not someone Greg could influence, a completely neutral professional. When he came out, Greg laughed. "Waste of money," he said, "already been settled." But I didn't respond, because something told me this wasn't settled at all. 2 days later, the results came in, and everything changed. The fence wasn't just 3 feet into my yard, it was crossing multiple lot boundaries, a section that had been misfiled years ago. And according to the official records, that entire strip Greg thought was his was still legally attached to my property. But that wasn't the real twist, because when we extended the survey further, we found something no one expected. Greg's backyard, a significant portion of it, nearly 15 feet deep, was also sitting on land that legally belonged to me. The original developer had made a filing error years ago, never corrected in the HOA's records, but it was corrected in the county registry, which is the only one that actually matters, meaning Greg had built his fence into my yard while unknowingly placing a large part of his own yard onto my property. He didn't just take land, he exposed himself. And the HOA? They approved it without verifying, which made them liable too. I didn't confront Greg right away. I let him enjoy it for exactly one more day. Then I sent the documents, certified, to him and the HOA, along with a simple notice. Immediate removal required. Full property restoration expected. The reaction was instant. Greg showed up at my door that evening, angry. "This is wrong," he said. "It's already been approved." I handed him the official survey, stamped, verified, irrefutable. He read it once, then again, and I watched the confidence drain from his face. "That's not possible," he muttered, but it was, and he knew it. The HOA called an emergency meeting. Sound familiar? Except this time, I wasn't the one being questioned. The board looked nervous, very nervous. Their legal advisor spoke first. "Failure to verify boundary claims has resulted in unauthorized land transfer." Translation: they messed up. Badly. Greg was ordered to remove the entire fence, restore my property, pay for damages, cover legal and survey costs. But that wasn't all. Because the land behind his house? Still mine. Which meant legally he had been using my property for months. Without permission. The final agreement? He had to either purchase that portion of land from me, or vacate and restore it completely. At his expense. He chose to pay. A lot. Far more than that strip was worth. Because the alternative? Was losing half his backyard. A week later, the fence was gone, the ground restored. And Greg? He stopped making eye contact, stopped hosting gatherings, stopped acting like he owned anything beyond his walls. Because now he knew exactly where his boundaries were and who really controlled them. As for me, I didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. I just stood in my yard looking at the space that had always been mine, quiet, undisturbed, exactly how it should be. Because in the end, some people don't cross lines by accident, they just assume no one will notice.